Last week, I arrived at my client's home around 9 in the morning, like I always do. Margaret was sitting at her kitchen table, eating chicken salad straight from the container. I noticed the container was warm. I asked her when she'd made it. She said yesterday afternoon. I asked where she'd kept it overnight. She pointed to the counter. It had been sitting there, uncovered, for almost 20 hours. She looked at me like I was overreacting. She said, "I've been doing this my whole life. Never made me sick once." 3 days later, I got a call from her daughter. Margaret was in the hospital with severe dehydration from food poisoning. She's 84 years old. What would have been a miserable few days for someone younger nearly killed her. She spent 4 days in the hospital on an IV. Her daughter was devastated. She kept asking me, why didn't I know this mattered so much now? Margaret isn't the only one. In my 15 years as a caregiver, I've rushed 5 seniors to the emergency room for foodborne illness. And every single one of them said the same thing Margaret said. I've been doing this my whole life. And they're right. They have been. For 60, 70, even 80 years, they followed the same food habits their mothers taught them. And for most of their lives, those habits worked just fine. But something changed. And most people don't realize it until they're sitting in a hospital bed wondering what happened. If you've noticed your stomach doesn't handle things the way it used to, I want you to know, you're not imagining it. If you're getting what you think are stomach bugs more often, or if certain foods that never bothered you before are suddenly making you feel terrible, there's a reason for that. Your body is trying to tell you something. Here's what most people don't understand. After 70, your body's entire relationship with food safety fundamentally changes. Your immune system doesn't respond to bacteria the way it used to. The stomach acid that used to protect you from harmful organisms, it decreases as you age. Your body's ability to fight off infections, to recover from illness, to handle the same risks you handled your whole life, none of it works like it did at 50. The rules you lived by for 60 years, they need updating, and I've seen what happens when people don't realize this until it's too late. I'm not telling you this to scare you. I promise you that's not my intention. I'm telling you this because I've sat with too many families in hospital rooms, watched too many preventable illnesses, heard too many people say, I wish someone had told us this mattered now. I make these videos because I want to give you something those families didn't have. Awareness. While there's still time to make different choices. What kept you safe for decades can become dangerous after 70. Not because you're doing anything wrong, not because you're careless or foolish, but because your body has changed in ways you can't see or feel until something goes wrong. And the hardest part? These changes happen gradually. You don't wake up one morning and suddenly have a weakened immune system. It shifts slowly, quietly, over years. So the habits that protected you at 45 stop protecting you at 75. And most people have no idea until they end up sick. That's what I want to change. I want you to understand what's different now, what habits need adjusting, what small changes can prevent serious consequences. Because I've also seen the other side. I've watched seniors make simple adjustments to their kitchen routines and stop getting sick. I've seen people reclaim the stability and strength they thought they'd lost. It's possible. But first, you need to know what's actually putting you at risk. I want to tell you about a man I cared for. I'll call him Robert to protect his privacy. He was 79 when I started working with him. Sharp mind, good health, and he was proud of what he called his iron stomach. He'd tell me stories about eating street food all over the world, never getting sick once. He said his body could handle anything. But when I started caring for him, he was getting what he called stomach bugs every few weeks. His doctor kept treating the symptoms, nausea medication, something for the cramping, but nobody could figure out why it kept happening. I was there 3 afternoons a week, and I started noticing a pattern. Robert would make himself lunch before I arrived, usually a sandwich or leftovers. He'd eat half of it, then get distracted by the television or the newspaper. He'd leave the plate on the coffee table. Hours would go by. Sometimes I'd arrive at 2 in the afternoon and that plate would still be sitting there from 11 that morning. And when I'd mention it, he'd wave me off. He'd say, I'm going to finish that in a bit. And he would. He'd eat it during the evening news, 4, 5, sometimes 6 hours after he'd made it. Food that should have been in the refrigerator, sitting out at room temperature all afternoon. When I finally connected his stomach problems to this pattern, he didn't believe me at first. He said, "I've been doing this my whole life. It never made me sick before." And he was right. For 79 years, his body had handled it just fine. But something had changed. And once we started putting that food away after 2 hours, those mysterious stomach bugs stopped. Completely. Here's what most people don't realize. There's a reason food safety experts talk about the 2-hour rule. When food sits out at room temperature, bacteria multiply incredibly fast, doubling every 20 minutes in some cases. And after 70, your body doesn't fight those bacteria the way it used to. Your immune system naturally weakens with age. Your stomach produces less acid, which means there's less of that first line of defense against harmful organisms. And if you're taking medications, antacids, proton pump inhibitors, even some blood pressure medications, those can reduce your stomach acid even further. So the same plate of food that would have given you mild discomfort at 45 can send you to the hospital at 75. The same mayonnaise-based salad that sat out for 3 hours at a family picnic in 1985 and didn't bother you at all. It can make you seriously ill now. Not because you're doing anything different, because your body's defenses have shifted. I also cared for a woman I'll call Dorothy. She was 71. She'd been having recurring infections that nobody could quite explain. When I started working in her home, I watched her make chicken for dinner one evening. She rinsed the raw chicken in the sink, just like her mother had taught her. She thought she was being careful, being clean. But what she couldn't see was the bacteria from that raw chicken splashing all over her sink, the faucet, the counter, the dish rack. Invisible contamination spreading everywhere, and her immune system, at 71, couldn't handle that constant exposure anymore. Your mother taught you to trust your senses, to smell food before you ate it, to look at it carefully. And for 60, 70 years, that worked. Your nose could detect spoilage. Your eyes could spot mold or discoloration. But some of the bacteria that make you sick now don't have a smell. They don't change how food looks. And your body can't fight them off the way it used to. I want to be clear about something. This isn't about you getting weaker. It's not a personal failure. It's biology. Your body has carried you this far with incredible strength and resilience. But bacteria have also evolved. They've gotten stronger, more resistant, and your body's natural defenses, through no fault of your own, have decreased. The habits your grandmother taught you weren't wrong. They kept you safe for decades, but they were designed for a different version of your body. A younger immune system, more stomach acid, faster recovery time. And now, those habits need updating. Not because you're careless, not because you don't know how to take care of yourself, but because the rules have changed and nobody told you. There are mistakes that feel dangerous. Leaving a burner on, forgetting to lock the door. Those are the ones we worry about. But there are other mistakes that don't feel dangerous at all. They look like being careful. They look like doing what you've always done. And those are the ones I see causing the most harm. Let me tell you what I saw in Dorothy's kitchen. She was 71. Her kitchen was immaculate. Everything had its place. Counters wiped down. Dishes always done. She took pride in keeping a clean home. One evening, I was there while she made dinner. She took chicken out of the refrigerator and brought it to the sink. She turned on the water and started rinsing the chicken under the faucet, just like her mother had taught her, just like she'd done for 50 years. But what she couldn't see, what nobody can see, was the bacteria from that raw chicken splashing everywhere, onto the faucet handles, across the counter, into the dish rack where her clean plates were drying. Tiny droplets of contaminated water spreading salmonella and campylobacter to surfaces she thought were clean. She'd wipe down the counter afterward with a dish towel, the same towel she'd use to dry her hands later. And she had no idea she was essentially spreading bacteria throughout her kitchen every time she prepared poultry. Dorothy kept getting what she called stomach trouble. Nothing severe enough to go to the hospital, but enough to make her miserable every few weeks. When I finally made the connection and explained what was happening, she was shocked. She said, "But I'm being so careful. I'm cleaning." And she was. But clean and safe aren't always the same thing. You can't see bacteria. You can't smell it on your cutting board or your faucet or your dish towel. It's invisible. And after 70, your body doesn't have the reserves to fight off these invisible exposures the way it used to. This brings me to something else I see in almost every kitchen I work in: cutting boards. Most people have one cutting board they use for everything. They'll cut raw chicken on it, rinse it off, maybe give it a quick scrub, and then use it to slice vegetables for a salad an hour later. The bacteria from that raw chicken, it's still there, sitting in the tiny grooves and cuts in that cutting board, waiting to contaminate whatever gets cut on that surface next. I cared for a man I'll call James. He was 77. He prided himself on cooking his own meals. He'd make a beautiful chicken dinner, and the next day he'd use that same cutting board to cut tomatoes and cucumbers for lunch. He got sick 3 times in 2 months before we figured out what was happening. The solution wasn't complicated. Either use separate cutting boards, one for raw meat, one for everything else, or wash the board with hot soapy water and let it fully dry between uses. That's it. But he didn't know, and it was making him sick. Now here's the one that surprises people the most. I check every client's refrigerator temperature, and I'd say at least half of them are running too warm. They have no idea because they've never checked. Most people don't even know their fridge has a temperature dial, or if they do, they've never adjusted it. Your refrigerator should be between 37 and 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Any warmer than that, and bacteria can grow even while food is refrigerated. The milk that's supposed to be safe for another week. If your fridge is running at 45 degrees, it's not. The leftovers you're planning to eat tomorrow, they might already be unsafe. And after 70, when your immune system is already working harder, when your stomach acid has decreased, when maybe you're taking medications that reduce your defenses even further, that too warm refrigerator becomes a real risk. These aren't the mistakes that feel dangerous. That's what makes them so dangerous. You look at your kitchen and everything seems fine. Clean counters, food put away. You're doing everything you've always done. But there are invisible risks that your younger body could handle and your current body cannot. I'm not telling you this to make you afraid of your own kitchen. I'm telling you because these are fixable problems, simple changes that can make a real difference. But first, you have to know what to look for. You have to understand that what looks safe might not be. And that staying healthy sometimes means updating habits you've trusted your whole life. Here's what gives me hope. I worked with a woman I'll call Anne. She was 76 years old, and when I started caring for her, she was getting what she called stomach bugs every few weeks. She'd feel awful for a few days, recover, and then a couple weeks later, it would happen again. Her doctor couldn't find anything wrong. She thought it was just part of getting older. We made 4 simple changes to her kitchen routine. Just 4. She hasn't been sick once in 8 months. Not once. And the changes weren't complicated. They didn't require her to buy anything expensive or completely change how she lived. She just updated a few habits to match where her body is now. Let me tell you what those changes were, because they're things you can start doing today. First, the 2-hour rule. If food has been sitting out at room temperature for more than 2 hours, it goes in the refrigerator or it goes in the trash. That's it. Anne used to make lunch, get distracted, and finish eating it hours later. Now she sets a timer on her phone when she takes food out. 2 hours. When it goes off, she either puts the food away or throws it out. She told me it took about a week before it became automatic. Now she doesn't even think about it. Second, she stopped trusting just her nose and eyes. She started actually checking expiration dates, especially on dairy products and deli meat. If the yogurt says it expired 3 days ago, it goes in the trash even if it looks and smells fine. If the lunch meat is past its date, she doesn't take the chance. She said this was the hardest one for her at first because it felt wasteful. But after I reminded her that a hospital stay costs a lot more than a container of yogurt, she understood. Third, the cutting board situation. Anne now keeps two cutting boards, one for raw meat, one for everything else. They're color-coded so she never mixes them up. Red for meat, green for vegetables. And after she uses either one, it gets washed with hot soapy water before she uses it again. That's it. Two cutting boards and a habit of washing them properly between uses. Fourth, the refrigerator temperature. We bought a simple fridge thermometer. Cost less than $10. We checked her fridge temperature, and it was running at 46 degrees, way too warm. We adjusted the dial, and now she checks that thermometer once a week to make sure it's staying between 37 and 40 degrees. That simple change made a huge difference. And one more thing we did that wasn't on my original list. She stopped rinsing raw chicken. Just stopped. She takes it straight from the package to the cutting board, no rinsing. Then she washes her hands thoroughly, washes the cutting board thoroughly, and wipes down any surfaces the package might have touched. No more bacteria splashing all over her sink and counter. Now, I know some of you are thinking, this seems like a lot. 5 different things to remember. But here's what I've seen over and over. These changes become automatic within about 2 weeks. You don't have to think about them anymore. They just become part of your routine, like brushing your teeth or locking the door at night. You don't need to become paranoid about food. You don't need to be afraid of your own kitchen. You just need to become aware. You need to work with your body as it is now, not as it was 20 years ago. This isn't giving up independence. This is protecting it. Because staying out of the hospital, that's how you stay independent. That's how you keep living in your own home, making your own meals, taking care of yourself. These small changes prevent the big problems that steal that independence away. Your body still wants to stay strong. Your immune system is still working to protect you. But you have to give it the support it needs. You have to stop exposing it to risks it can't handle anymore. And when you do that, when you make these simple adjustments, I've watched people reclaim the stability and health they thought they'd lost. Anne told me recently that she feels better now than she has in years, not because her body got younger, but because she stopped fighting against what her body needed. She updated her habits, she adapted, and it made all the difference. Margaret came home from the hospital after 4 days. I went to see her that first afternoon. She was tired, shaken, but she was okay. Her daughter was there, and I could see the guilt all over her face. She pulled me aside and said, "Why didn't anyone tell us this mattered so much now? Why didn't we know?" I've heard some version of that question so many times, from so many families, and it breaks my heart every single time, because these are preventable situations. These are illnesses that didn't have to happen. Time that didn't have to be lost. That's why I make these videos, not because I think I have all the answers, not because I'm trying to scare anyone, but because I've sat with too many families in hospital rooms. I've held too many hands, I've heard too many regrets, and I've watched preventable illnesses steal weeks, months' vitality that people didn't need to lose. If you're watching this and you've been taking care of yourself for 70, 80, even 90 years, I want you to hear this. You have incredible wisdom. You've navigated life longer than most people ever will. You know your own body. You know what you need. And adapting these food safety habits, that doesn't diminish any of that. It honors it. It honors the body that's carried you this far by giving it the support it needs now. Your mother's kitchen rules weren't wrong. They kept you safe for decades. But just like you update your glasses prescription when your vision changes, just like you adjust your exercise routine as your body changes, you can update your food safety practices too. It's not giving up, it's adapting. And adaptation is strength. If you're watching this for a parent or loved one, I want to say something to you too. Having this conversation with them doesn't mean you're treating them like a child. It doesn't mean you think they're incapable. It means you care enough to share information that could prevent suffering. That's love. That's respect. And there's a way to have this conversation that honors their independence while also protecting their health. You might say something like, "I learned something today about food safety after 70 that I didn't know before. Can I share it with you?" You're not lecturing. You're not taking over. You're offering information, and then you let them decide what to do with it. Because here's the truth I've learned after 15 years of doing this work. Small changes prevent serious consequences. A $10 fridge thermometer, a timer on a phone, 2 cutting boards instead of 1. These aren't dramatic overhauls, but I've watched them prevent hospitalizations. I've watched them give people their stability back. I worked with an 82-year-old man who made these changes. He told me afterward, "I wish someone had told me this 20 years ago." But I also told him what I'm telling you now. It's not too late. The changes you make today still matter. They still protect you. They still give you more good days ahead. Margaret told me something a few weeks after she came home from the hospital. She said, "I spent 4 days in that hospital bed thinking about all the things I take for granted. Being able to make my own breakfast, walk to my mailbox, water my garden. I never want to lose that time again." And she hasn't. She made the changes. She adapted. And she's thriving. That's what staying out of the hospital does. It protects your independence. It protects your ability to live the life you want to live in the home you want to live in. And these small kitchen habit changes, they're part of that protection. I've spent 15 years in this field because I believe the later years of life can be some of the most meaningful. I've witnessed it. I've seen people in their 80s living with more intention, more gratitude, more wisdom than most people half their age. But that requires awareness. It requires being willing to adapt when your body tells you it's time. You're not alone in this. Whether you're the person making these changes or the family member supporting someone you love, you're not navigating this alone. These patterns I've shared, they come from hundreds of seniors I've cared for. You're part of a much larger community of people learning to age with intention and wisdom. Start with one change, just one. Maybe it's checking your fridge temperature this week. Maybe it's setting that 2-hour timer tomorrow. Pick the one that feels most doable and start there. Because I've watched people transform their health one small habit at a time. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. And remember, adapting isn't giving up. It's giving your body what it needs to stay strong. I'll see you in the next one.